countdown clock had begun. We are supposed to be just under 2 weeks before the first ever criminal trial of an ex-president. Prosecutors with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office now say they are open to a delay in order to let Donald Trump's attorneys review a batch of records they just received yesterday. The Manhattan DA asked Judge Juan Merchan, who's overseeing the case, that the delay not exceed 30 days. We're back with Neil, Pete, and Lisa. Lisa, explain.
So this is a difficult situation to explain, but you're right. The trial was supposed to begin on March 25th with jury selection, and it appears that some time ago, but likely within the last several days, Donald Trump's folks filed a motion before Judge Merchan asking for an adjournment or dismissal of the trial for 90 days because the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, who they had issued a subpoena to in January, has now produced 104,000 pages of documents related to Michael Cohen's conviction on campaign finance charges. Nicole, you know that the underlying facts of that conviction are at the heart of what this case is about. It's about the conspiracy between Michael Cohen, Donald Trump, executives at American Media, and Alan Weisselberg, among other people, to pay off Stormy Daniels in the wake of the disclosure of the Access Hollywood tape that almost completely derailed and destroyed Donald Trump's candidacy in 2016. It seems that the DA's office asked for a very wide swath of these materials last year. What they got, they turned over to Donald Trump, they say, last June in these papers. However, without ever complaining about it, Trump then issued a subpoena of his own this last January, and only in the last several days has he received these 104,000 pages that go to the core of their defense, that Michael Cohen is not to be believed, that he is a liar, and that the facts, as investigated by SDNY, will show that they purposefully did not prosecute Donald Trump, and not just because he was a sitting president, but because they didn't think they could support a conviction of him on the same federal charges that Trump argued should preempt Alvin Bragg's case.
So Trump asks SDNY for these documents when?
Trump asked SDNY on January 18th. And after he asks SDNY, it appears that since March 4th, he first got a initial tranche of 73,000 pages, and then just yesterday afternoon got another 31,000 pages, along with a notification that more would be coming next week. If I am Alvin Bragg right now, who is, by the way, an alum of the Southern District of New York, as well as a former employee of the New York Attorney General's office, I am livid with my former office.
But why didn't Alvin Bragg have it? I mean, why wasn't this all part of the case from the beginning?
Well, that's what I think Alvin Bragg's folks are trying to understand, too, right? We made a very detailed request to you at the outset of our prosecution.
Bragg's office.
Bragg's office. We asked you, SDNY, for a whole panoply of different kinds of materials that relate to the Cohen prosecution. We asked for grand jury minutes and tapes. We asked for witness lists and other documents that identify the names and identity of grand jury witnesses. We wanted the grand jury subpoenas and documents returned pursuant to them. We asked for exhibits given to the grand jury. And we also asked for summaries of witness interviews occurring outside the grand jury, as well as some other things. They say they got a subset of what they requested, but everything they got, they promptly turned over to Donald Trump, only to hear nothing from Trump complaining about that until Trump issues his own subpoena to SDNY less than 2 months before trial. And lo and behold, here we are, somewhat buried under new materials from SDNY coming out from under the woodwork. There has been no explanation to date, as far as I can see, for why SDNY is suddenly willing to produce to Donald Trump that which they were not able or willing to produce to another prosecutorial office last year. So if I am Alvin Bragg right now, I got a lot of questions.
If I'm Donald Trump, I'm writing "Making the Deep State Great Again" on my new red hat. Neil Katyal, what's going on at Merrick Garland's SDNY?
Well, look, I understand there's a rush to blame the Southern District and to blame Merrick Garland. I think some of that has baggage from before. I think we need to wait and see what these facts are, because as I read the Manhattan District Attorney's filing today, he's pretty clear that the blame lies with Donald Trump and not with anyone else. His argument in the papers is, look, we had subpoenaed all of this material that Lisa mentioned back and turned it over to Donald Trump on June 8th, 2023, a long time ago. Trump had access to all of that material, didn't say a peep about wanting any new material until 2 months before a trial in January of 24. So Maybe that story has holes, maybe it's spin, I don't know. But, before just rushing to condemn the federal Justice Department, I think we should wait and see. I mean, it's certainly not normal behavior, which would be par for the course with this particular defendant, to try and request materials just 2 months before a trial is set to begin.
Nicole, can I just respond to that really quickly?
Of course you can.
Because, my response to Neil would be, it's a both and, right? They can be absolutely livid with SDNY for turning over to Trump stuff that they didn't get last year despite identical requests, and still maintain publicly that the fault and the blame lies in Donald Trump for his own delay. I think both can be true, both likely are true. I hear his point that we need to see what actually happened with SDNY. And by the way, folks should ask the Department of Justice and the Southern District, what happened here? Because as far as I know, there hasn't been any correspondence from the SDNY that's been produced in the public records to date. Hopefully we'll see a statement or correspondence from them explaining why there is this divergence between their initial response to Alvin Bragg and what they gave to Donald Trump.
Well, and I guess, Pete Strzok, I want to respond to Neil's chiding, if you will. The skepticism comes from people like Jeff Berman outing Bill Barr's DOJ and making abundantly clear that SDNY was not to charge Trump no matter what. And the fact remains, and I'm not a lawyer, never been in the FBI. Folks were nervous about Hyde Fair and that polygraph, the only time I stuck my toe in those waters. But here's what I know. Michael Cohen didn't have sex with the porn star. Michael Cohen didn't benefit from the sex with the porn star staying secret until after people had voted in the 2016 election. Michael Cohen went to jail. People, I think, have a right to ask what's going on here.
Nicole, they absolutely do. And I mean, first off, I agree with Lisa that my reading of that today's filing, it is clear that Alvin Bragg's office is making a point to say, hey, SDNY, we asked you for this material over a year ago. You declined to produce some of the material that you just turned over recently. So, and I agree with Neil that we need to wait and hear what DOJ's rationale was. That, look, there is an interplay and some tension between federal prosecutors and state prosecutors. But there are some cases that are far more equal than others. And a prosecution against the former president of the United States is one of those that should have been highlighted and does point to, Nicole, what you're making a point about, that the visibility of the American public into the workings of our judicial system. Granted, you can't give up things that are private, that if they're not charged, you want to maintain the innocence of people. But there are past events, largely caused by Donald Trump and Bill Barr and his administration, that cause people to wonder about the workings of the Department of Justice and the justice system broadly. So I expect I hope, for some sort of transparency about what happened here. I think it absolutely is going to result in a delay to the beginning of the New York trial. But, again, what that information is and the fact that this would be of, use or necessary to the New York District Attorney, I don't understand why the Southern District of New York didn't turn that over sooner.
Neil, I know we lose you momentarily, but we both responded to you. I want to give you the last word.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that's been said. Right now, the facts do look, as Lisa says, like a yes and situation. It may turn out that there are other facts or an explanation that we just don't know of yet. And that's the only thing I'm urging is just a little bit of patience. This filing was just done an hour ago by the Manhattan District Attorney. Let's just wait and see and let some facts unfold. And I think Peter's absolutely right to say we, the American public, deserve an explanation of what's going on here. This isn't like a prosecution for stealing donuts. This is as serious as it gets.